Welcome everybody to this. We had a meeting a year ago, but now I think things have been settled on other issues that there's good timing to specifically focus just on parks. So welcome for the El Sobrante Valley Parks Working Group. And I thought what we do is just take 30 seconds to everyone just say who you are, any affiliation. And I'm going to turn it to Edgar first, our new staff person for El Sobrante. Some of you know him, Edgar Rosales.
Hi, everyone. I am the new district coordinator for Supervisor John Joya. I feel like I met most of you folks. If not, I've spoke with you over the phone. I am the geographical areas that I look at are El Sobrante and East Richmond Heights and Rollingwood. Yeah, and I'm here with John. So I will pass it over to Thomas.
Hi, everybody. I think we all know each other. My name is Tom Lang. I'm chair of the SMAC, and I also work a lot with the Chamber of Commerce in helping out with the stroll. And I'm very interested in talking about a potential new park. It'd be a great addition to our town.
I'll just go. Mark Croda.
I'm here, Mark Croda, longtime resident of El Sobrante, former owner of El Sobrante Town Garage and Restoration Auto. Now I'm retired and just trying to survive here in El Sobrante.
And you're on the chamber board, right?
I'm on the chamber board. I was the president during COVID. But we made it through that.
Great. Thank you. Gavin.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Gavin Raiders. I'm with Planting Justice. I'm also involved with the Good Table, the former Adachi Nursery site.
And you do have a farm in El Sobrante as well.
We do have a farm up off of Hilltop, near Hilltop Drive, Hilltop
Right.
and Marin Road.
Sharon.
He needs to unmute.
Oh, still mute.
Hello?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, so I'm founder and former coordinator for Citizens for a Greener El Sobrante, founder and president of Citizens for Greener Communities.
Great. Thank you. Melinda. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. We all initiated this whole park project. Are you hearing me?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, that's it.
Good. Thanks, Sharon. Yes, we could hear everything. Melinda.
I can't see anybody. I see you.
Oh, change your if you change your view to gallery, you'll see everybody. You probably have it on speaker. So change it to gallery and then you could see everybody. We all fit on one screen.
Yeah, I know. This is the first time I've not encountered seeing everybody. I don't know how to change it in gallery. Some more.
For upper right-hand corner, you'll see it says view and
Where on the upper right hand it says view.
change your view.
Good. In the meantime, Melinda, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm also on the SMAC with Tom Lang, and I work with Gavin Raiders on the Good Table project, and I'm a resident of Sherwood Forest.
Great. Nicole.
I'm Nicole Don, and I am the current president of the El Sobrante Chamber of Commerce. Also the manager of U.S. Financial Mortgage, but that's not super relevant to this. One of the things I am extremely interested in is having a town square type of place that the community can gather. My mission, for lack of a better word, is to bring El Sobrante into the middle of the 21st century instead of having it stuck somewhere in the middle of the 20th century. And I think, I like the mixed zoning that we're having now. I want it to be a friendly, walkable town. I don't want it to just be a place where people go home, go to sleep, and then drive to work the next day.
Great, thank you. Judy.
Hi, I'm Judy Ward. I'm with volunteer with Spawners and on the chamber board and also involved with the Friends of the Library.
Great. Kim.
Hi, I'm Kim Hazard, and this is Joaquin. He just woke up. And I'm the current coordinator for Citizens for Greener El Sobrante. I also, as a community member, sit on the Sustainability Commission for the county, as well as the Integrated Pest Management Committee.
Yes, and thanks for your service on both those important commissions.
Yeah.
Sohaila.
Well, I'm Sohaila Bana, currently running for office, excuse the shirt, but I'm also director of Citizens for Greener El Sobrante, and I've been working with Sharon on the park. As Nicole mentioned, we do need a focal point for El Sobrante and this part of Richmond. I mean, if you look at the video clips from 50 years ago, San Pablo Dam Road is the same thing. We need to develop it, change it, build the community, and also we need access to San Pablo Creek and saving its life. Thank you for being here.
Sue.
My name's Sue Boudreau, and I am a former science teacher. I've just retired, and I'm excited. I'm very excited about stuff that has an ecological aspect to it. I very much want to bring back more community to our community, because I totally agree with what people have been saying about the main drag through El Sobrante. I'm also kind of a realist about. I'm also on the El Sobrante MAC. I'm the newest member there. So, yeah.
Thank you. So what I'm going to do is just very briefly summarize some of the information in the memo so we can all put it out, have common information, and make some general comments, and then, I open it up for our discussion. I will, before even getting into the memo, I will say what's interesting is that two things were raised, I know, that have been actually on the plate for El Sobrante for many years. Many years ago, the county identified in its general plan a location on the dam road to create a town square. And originally, and again, it's not always site specific, but I think originally it was identified as that parking lot across from where the park is, actually the Mechanics Bank parking lot. It was identified, came out of a community process probably about 15 years ago about identifying some place downtown to have a town square. That's always been an interest. The issue of a creek along the trail has been an interest of mine as well, and I know Maurice Abraham had talked about it when he was alive, and that would be a very long involved process, but something that would involve, when we had redevelopment many years ago, we were going to explore whether to have eminent domain, but there was a lot of opposition to doing eminent domain as part of redevelopment in El Sobrante. This is 15 years ago, because ultimately to do a creek along the dam road, you'd have to bring in along the creek Fish and Wildlife, Fish and Game, and deal with those issues and obtain a strip of property from the private property owners along there. I visited actually a creek, something similar in San Luis Obispo. So I know that has been on the table for some consideration for some time as well. So just acknowledging those two things. So getting to parks, and I know Citizens for Greener El Sobrante, has been very active about a park and at the Maori property. So I know we'll be talking about that. But for background, so I'm just going to quickly go through what's in the memo. So, and if you've read it, fine. If you haven't, you can go back. But we spent a fair amount of time getting information from county council, county administrator, elections, and public works, sort of put together the information. So the first thing is, where does funding for parks come from in the county? What's sort of the practice about parks? And what we have attached is a list of all the parks in the unincorporated areas in Contra Costa County, not in cities, because cities have their own mechanism within cities, but for the county unincorporated areas, you'll see the parks that are listed there, where they're located, their acreage, and what zone or CSA they're in. Basically, each of them are in a special district that has an ongoing funding source. I know this is something we've mentioned over time. The county does not have any general fund budget or amount for parks. All of it come through an ongoing funding source that funds the maintenance of the park. And they're funded either through a county service area or a landscape zone. The good news with regard to the CSA, and that's actually on page 3, when it says what county entity would be able to raise revenue for a park. Way back in 1974, the Board of Supervisors established a county service area, R9, for unincorporated El Sobrante. And the map of that area is attached, and you'll see it's all of unincorporated El Sobrante, plus a slice of what is actually sometimes called the North Arlington area, but it's on this map. And you'll, oops, there it is. So that is the unincorporated area and the zone. And it was formed in order to create a mechanism to raise money for parks. And they put a measure on the ballot back in the mid-'80s that did not pass. The Local Agency Formation Commission, or LAFCO, which is in charge of boundaries and annexations in special districts, was looking at dissolving the district, and twice I reached out to them and told them to withhold, requested that they not take any action on dissolving R9 because we have a working group that's going to explore a ballot measure for parks in El Sobrante. And so the commission, which is made up of city council members, a couple county supervisors, public members, and special district members, voted to delay any action on the R9 zone until next year, when we can report back to them. And that's important because the R9 would be the entity that would actually, through the county, put a measure on the ballot. It would be voted on in the R9 area. And what typically happens if there is a funding measure, the Board of Supervisors would appoint a residents advisory committee. So if a measure passed, we would appoint 5 to 7 residents to serve on an R9 advisory committee to help provide advice and oversee the measure's expenditures and make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. So that's the R9 group. And I wanted to make a distinction between capital and operational expenses, which is relevant. So the capital cost, I mean, there's 2 areas that we're essentially looking for money, is for the capital piece and for operations. The capital piece basically, right, is the cost of acquiring the property, buying it, cleaning it up, and actually building the park. And, you know, the cost of the capital costs really depend upon what's going to be in the park, the landscaping, the drainage cost. Drainage plays a big role. Play structures, lighting, benches, picnic areas, fields, restrooms, paths, all of that. And so one of the issues that's important in looking at any site is, and hearing from all of you as a work group, you know, what are the kinds of things that the community wants to see in the park? What are the kind of things that would make sense in a park? And then the operational and maintenance cost are the utility cost of water, sewage, electricity, garbage, plus the staffing to actually maintain the improvements in the landscaping. And you will see, and there is actually a range of cost. I indicated that the most expensive park the county has, which is on 6 acres in Discovery Bay, costs $290,000 a year to maintain. A small 2/10 of an acre park was $5,000. I don't know the dynamics of that, but there's other parks. So ultimately, Public Works, depending on what is actually designed, Public Works would then do an estimate about what the annual maintenance cost would be, and that would be important to factor into any measure we put together. I did want to provide some background about the mini park and the reading garden at the library. If any of you may remember, about 15 years ago, there was basically nothing there. It was all ivy
Right.
and not in very good shape. And we started a process probably about 15, 17 years ago to use the park dedication funds. And I'll talk about that, to basically redo that whole area. You know, that reading garden was built, the amphitheater. As you recall, Spawners worked really hard on taking out a lot of the ivy and replacing it with native landscaping. There was fencing to put in to prevent unhoused individuals who were basically sleeping and defecating on the banks of the creek, and that was going into the creek. So the actual Friends of the Library building, now renamed the Nancy Fadden House, was improved to accommodate public events, both by the Friends and by the Historical Society of El Sobrante. So pretty much the park dedication money over the last 15 years went into improving. Actually, the Children's Reading Garden also took a fair amount of drainage. Drainage was a lot more expensive than we remember this, Judy, if you remember
Yes.
that. Than we
Yes.
thought. Drainage is, for a park, is an expensive thing.
Right, right.
So and the park dedication fee that the county collects is a one-time fee paid by a developer when a unit of housing is built. And it has to be spent to benefit El Sobrante residents. And the county puts it into an account for El Sobrante. There's about $50,000 in that account now. There will be some growth in that, but there's not a lot of development. You know, there could be multifamily development planned on Appian Way or the Dam Road, and a fee will be collected. So that amount will grow, but I think that will take time to grow over time. And so that funding was used again to create the mini park on property the county owns, and it was designed in a way to have very minimal maintenance. And so we're fortunate to have the Spawners do a lot of the work on the landscaping. And then, of course, the occupants of the building maintain the building. And then the library staff, the library has public works staff do some of the maintenance of landscaping around the library. Now, many years ago, before I got on the board, there was an R9 advisory committee that recommended spending park dedication funds on buying a site for a park. And that a 10-acre site in the city of Richmond near De Anza. And we'll show it, maybe Edgar, you'll show it on the screen. Unfortunately, it has a lot of access issues. And I did send a map that shows where it's located. And yeah, I'm not certain that was the best investment. I'm not sure how much they paid for it, but it's 10 acres in the city of Richmond. It is zoned, looks like it was zoned public, cultural, and institutional. There's the site behind behind De Anza. And maybe if we can show the what it looks like. When the school district rebuilt De Anza, we reached out to the school district and asked if they had any interest in buying it or using it. And they said they did not. So it is basically that area, that grass area just below the school. So you see the rounded corner. So it's that area there. It's in the city, and that is currently owned by the county. So I just wanted to put that out there. We did explore. We'll go back to our gallery now. See everybody. So we explored whether we could build a solar farm out there, and then use the revenue from the solar farm to sell power to pay for park maintenance. So we did do an analysis on this over a year ago, and our energy manager in Public Works did the whole analysis. I have it. but showed we wouldn't derive any revenue until 20 years out. So that means we're not going to get any revenue from a solar farm on that site. You know, could the site be sold, you know, for residential development? I think that's problematic. It possibly could. It would have to be rezoned by the city. You know, there'd be access issues, and there probably would be neighborhood opposition. So anyway, can it be used as a park? We'll put that out there. You know, I don't know. It's a big site. Anyway, it's not downtown El Sobrante, but that was a decision that residents in El Sobrante made about 25 to 30 years ago to buy that site. Other items real quickly, just to cover. We talked a brief about capital operational. What would it take to put a measure on the ballot? There's several ways, but the two major ways would be a parcel tax that either the Board of Supervisors put on the ballot, and that would require a 2/3 vote. However, there was a recent California Supreme Court ruling that said taxes placed on the ballot by a citizen's initiative, as opposed to by government, would require a majority vote, which is one reason why you don't see Public Works at this meeting, because the more the county staff are involved in helping put a measure together, the greater somebody can argue that it was a county-sponsored measure. So it's, you know, basically me working with all of you. So if there's if there was a measure qualified for the ballot, it would take a majority instead of 2/3. And you know, how much would we raise? So there are about 5,000 parcels in unincorporated El Sobrante in the R9 zone. And so I think a good rule of thumb, which I did put in the memo, is that for every $50 in assessment, we would raise $250,000 a year. So every $100, so $100 would raise $500,000 a year. Just by comparison, a number of years ago, the community wanted the board to put on the ballot a measure for a resident deputy, which there's not a need for anymore because the county used some extra, not Measure X money, but some Prop 172, which is a public safety sales tax statewide, to increase the beat officers in unincorporated areas which had been underfunded. So there was a measure. It was I can't recall. It was somewhere around $40 a year, and it got somewhere in the upper 50s, I believe. Did not get its 2/3. It was somewhere around 60 or upper 50s in that range, and that was, I think, less than $40 a year for a resident deputy, and that was about 10 years ago or so, or more, 10 or more years ago. So just a little comparison for that. I think it is hard passing revenue measures in El Sobrante. I've been involved in a lot of revenue measures around, and I just know El Sobrante is a tough place to pass them. So anyway, $100 would raise $500,000. So it gives us a sense. When could this be put on the ballot? The state law allows elections on certain days. Many of them are mail ballot only elections, which is actually preferable. And you can see next on the memo we did, there can be an election on March 7th, May 2nd, August 29th, or November 7th. So there are opportunities throughout the year, and you have to qualify it on the 88 days before the election date. So about 3 months before. So if there was a petition circulated with a measure to qualify, and we laid out in the memo, we don't need to go into details. There's a process to go through, but all that would need to be done 3 months before the election date to be able to qualify it. And how many signatures would we need? It's basically 10% of the votes cast in the last gubernatorial election, which is coming up in November. And if you estimate the turnout is 70 to 80%, it's going to be in that range. There's 10,000 registered voters in the CSA R9 area. That means 700 to 800 signatures. So 700 to 800 signatures go through a process, you get them verified, and you get that done 3 months before, the election date, and then you qualify it for what is most likely a mail ballot measure. So that's a bit about the process. And so it would take, I think, a lot of community support by stakeholders, not just those who signed the petitions for the park, even though there was a lot of good work. It would really take a broad cross-section of residents, which is why we have a number here. The last item, I did check with the realtor on the Maori property, Tom Casaza, and he informed me just a few days ago that, the current escrow is going to fall through again, so that not have a buyer, and it's listed for $988,000 currently on the market. So so there's been a lot of interest on that site. Should other sites be investigated? With regard to the Maori site, there would probably, the county would need to, I know there's been a design for the park. The county public works would spend a fair amount of time looking at that design and do its own estimate about what construction cost and maintenance costs would be. It would also have to do, as it does with every property it buys, it would have to do some more analysis on contamination and cleanup issues to identify whether there are any additional costs associated with cleanup for the site. So there's that. I will, where are there other parks in El Sobrante, right? In the past, residents who served on the R9 committee made a recommendation to use some park dedication funds. It wasn't a lot, to support a play structure at Lemoyne or Cheese Park in the city of Richmond. As you know, there's East Bay Regional Park District's Kennedy Grove, and there's the mini park around the library. I know that Planning Justice and the whole Good Table project is designed to create a venue and a space for people to use, not a park, but a space up on the triangle on Appian Way. So I think I'll stop there, but I wanted to at least cover those items that were in the memo and sort of bring us to reality about what numbers are. I mean, hypothetically, this is just a number I'm picking. If we took the estimate that that Citizens for a Greener El Sobrante did, their grant application was $8.5 million. If you took that $8 million and I do want to say one thing. If the construction and capital costs would be paid out of a bond that the county issued, so that the debt service on that bond, which is typically over 30 years, we use an estimate of 4% interest rate. So that would be paid for through the measure ongoing. Now, if there were more park dedication funds or grants to buy a parcel and build a park, that would reduce the need for how much you would get through a bond. If a grant was received that covered part or all of the cost, you would need less revenue. If you needed to fund it all through the measure, let's assume it was around $8 million to buy and build a park. That is $462,000 a year in debt service. And then if you were to say, I'll take the low end and say spend $50,000 to $75,000 to maintain a park. That's $500 to $500, let's say $550,000. That's a little over $110 a year. So that gives you a sense. But that's just really rough numbers. Let me say this, and I've been involved in lots of grant applications. I'm familiar with funding and measures in parks. I do think that El Sobrante is not as well positioned to get a statewide grant like a park in Richmond or North Richmond would be, because a lot of these grants go to communities that have a high, what's called EnviroScreen score. California EPA has a ranking of communities based on zip code, based on, I'm very familiar with this on the Air District, based on impacts. El Sobrante is not, doesn't rank high on that. And those zip codes tend to get more of the grants because they are in impacted communities. That's just my experience and being familiar with this process. So doesn't mean there may not be some grants, but there's none currently available. And let me respond to something since it was mentioned. Yes, Senator Nancy Skinner is the chair of the Budget Committee, has been working with the East Bay Regional Park District about creating a regional park out at Point Melati. And her good efforts got the legislature and the governor to agree to $36 million to go toward other funding to help purchase Point Melati, and the Park District is very happy they received that money. They are working with other organizations to look at other funding. We will see what happens with that. They would negotiate with the property owner to buy it. That money was not available for a park in El Sobrante. So I just want to be clear about that since that issue was raised. I am proudly working with the Sierra Club and grassroots activists to actually turn that into a regional park. It is interesting that both Chevron and the Sierra Club have the same position. Neither of them want to see 1,500 luxury homes built next to an oil refinery in an area that requires hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure and has one access point in and out. So, what's likely to happen there is that funding will probably get used because it's dedicated in the bill, in the state bill for that site. Now, are there other opportunities at the state level? I think we can all be aware and look for those. But I think El Sobrante is just not as well positioned as something, and let's say that's in Bay Point or Pittsburgh or Richmond, just because of the rankings that the state uses. So with that, I'll stop, and maybe we'll just go into, just discussion about this and people's general feeling, knowing that, I want to be supportive of a measure in a realistic way, and I think that. Frankly, being able to, I think having a site is important. Understanding that site and doing more due diligence, whether it's the Maori site or another site, I think is important to do, so that Public Works would have to create a very detailed estimate of capital and operational cost, so that we could compute what the measure would need to be, and then work toward that.
Do you have an estimate of, and I should know this, but I don't, the percentage of homeowners compared to renters here in El Sobrante?
Good point. I can get that. I think it's about 50-50.
That's kind of what my feeling.
Yeah. Now now interesting you raised that, Nicole, because if a measure that qualifies by initiative is voted on by registered voters,
correct,
which has a much better chance of passage than a property owner only vote. There is a mechanism, I did not put it in this memo because I'm not sure if it's realistic, where the county would do a property owner only assessment, meaning it would still be paid by the property owner like a parcel tax is, but the vote is taken among property owners only, and that would take a majority vote of property owners. It is a lot easier to get a majority vote of registered voters than of property owners. So that's another option that involves majority of property owner only votes. Obviously with registered voters, anyone who lives in El Sobrante, whether they're a tenant or an owner, gets to vote.
Yeah, which would be far preferable for this particular measure as far as passing. Yeah.
Right.
So Hela has that raised.
Yeah. Pardon?
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah, so Hela. Yeah, raise your hand and we'll call in. That's good. We can then call on folks.
Thank you, John. And I appreciate your suggestion of the other parcel becoming a park too. If you allow me to share a screen, I would like to show what the other side of that parcel looks like. I went canvassing actually, and for the first time I decided to go into that apartment complex area. I had no idea. And what I saw through its balcony was horrible. I'm going to show you a picture if I can share
This is that 10-acre site, Sohaila, the 10-acre site?
but behind De Anza.
Yes, good, right, okay.
People threw their trash.
Did you
just
want to
out
show
of
it?
the balcony, yes, and window to the side of the creek. So I think it'd be awesome if we have two access points to San Pablo Creek. This one we can start working on it, you know, I mean, it's not gonna be a farm, you say it has other issues, and it has a very large access to San Pablo Creek. So it'd be great, and it's right next to De Anza High School, so it's good for educational purposes. On this side, it's, you know, lower income families in very densely populated area. And it'd be awesome for them too, to have access to the creek. And then at the same time, we can start working on the other park. I just have two questions for you. One is, can you help us with the language of the draft to your office? Are there any lawyers? How sophisticated does it have to be so we can start collecting signatures?
Well,
At the stroll?
yeah, but before we collect signatures, let me inject reality. We have to determine where the park will be, how much it will cost to build the park, how much it will cost to maintain the park, because the county will not take on a park unless it has a funding source. So I think if there is interest in looking at the 10-acre site, I think that is a legitimate, request. We'd have to do more due diligence on that site to look at, I mean, the advantage is that the county owns it. The disadvantage is it's a really big site, and building a park on a portion of 10 acres, we don't know what that cost. So I think we would have to engage and do some more due diligence on that. Did you want to put up the map? and show that?
understand.
Yeah.
My
So-
question is, I understand East Bay Regional Parks has banked lands. It means it has lands it cannot develop yet.
Yeah.
It just banks them, closes them until they're ready, until they have the budget. We can do the same. We can work on the health of San Pablo Creek in that area. We don't have to develop it right away. We'll focus on acquiring the other one while working on the health of San Pablo Creek
Right.
only.
But let me be clear, we've already banked the land for the 10 acres. The county owns that land, it's banked. The issue is we don't have any money to build a park or maintain it there until we have a funding source.
Can volunteers start working on
No,
that?
look, this is not a, let
Okay.
me be clear. I've been in government for 34 years and 24 of them on the board. I helped pass a $500 million measure for San Francisco Bay. I helped pass a $100 million a year sales tax in the county. I helped pass $4 million a year for kids in Richmond. You have to look at things realistically. County cannot build a park with volunteers. State law prohibits that. City can't build a park with volunteers. State law prohibits that. What we have to do, I mean, the county has to do, we're a public agency. We have to do, and I'm not saying a park out there is impossible. We'd have to look at what portion of that site makes the most sense, assuming there's public support for that, right? What makes the most sense? What kind of park does the community want to see? You know, paths, sports fields, picnic areas, all of that is a process to understand. And is that the right location? And ultimately, there's a finite limit, I think, of what voters in El Sobrante are going to approve, right? You know, can we get $100 a year measure passed? I don't know the answer to that. It is a hard, I'm just saying, it's that $100.
I understand your position, John. So
Yeah.
let me ask my question quickly, because
Sure.
by the way, Edgar, if you give me share a screen so I can quickly share the pictures, I appreciate it. So is there a time limit between the time we collect the signatures or start collecting or drafting
Yeah.
and the time of the election?
Yeah.
Can we start
Yeah.
collecting now or?
No, well, before collecting, we need to, couple things need to be determined. I've drafted language for initiatives, and I drafted the Measure X ballot statement. That's simple, that's easy to do. The thing that's most important is understanding how much we need to raise. It does no good to go to voters and collect half of what we need, right? It just there'll be no park. So we need to first do the due diligence. We can't put the cart before the horse. We have to figure out, where's the park going to be? How much, what does the community want? How much will it cost to construct it and maintain it? So the process would be, I think, and I spelled it out in the memo. It looks like there's a process to go through, but the signatures have to be collected. I think I put it in here. They have to be collected. I think 180 days is the limit. If I didn't put it in here, I believe that's what it is. So once you start collecting the signatures, you have a time period to collect it under the law. And I'll make sure I can get that information. I may have not included it in here. I think it's 180 days, and which is what, 6 months. And I'll look it up while we're speaking here. And then it's presented to get, the signatures are verified, and then it's placed on the ballot. So it will take a few. It's basically 700 to 800 signatures of registered voters, and that probably takes a few months to collect, or a few days, not a few days. I mean, a couple months. But you do have a time period, and I'll make sure we lay that out as well.
Thank you. And I just
Do you want to show more of the site? Did you want us to put up the site, Sohaila, to look? Why don't I ask? Let me ask Edgar to put up the site again.
Okay, I just wanted to say this is just behind one building, so you can imagine how it may look like behind the houses, what they dump into the Sand Creek. Actually, it's horrible, and it's a pity that, I mean, this is San Pablo Creek.
Right.
Definitely need access to it, and the more access, the better.
Right. I will say, I think residents in El Sobrante will want to see what will be in this park. What will the park be used for? I don't know. Can you put up Edgar, put it up again?
Yes.
Did you want to show other pictures, Sohaila, before you?
That was it. I only had two
Okay,
pictures because I only went on one building.
Got it. And Edgar, do you want to put up just the site map again, and then we'll call. So not this one, but the other, actual, right? There we go, the satellite. So yeah, I mean, I think obviously, it may be worth taking a site visit out there and walking it. You can see where the creek is, right? Let me just say, building next to a creek is very expensive, and a lot of regulatory approvals. So the park would probably be built on the area away from the creek. And it looks, I don't know if there's access there off of that court, Regency Court. Then there are parking issues and all. I mean, there could even be community opposition to a park. You may not, some of you may not know, when we first built the reading garden at the library, there were a few homes behind there that were against it because they thought that having people in that area would interfere with their use in their backyards. So we don't know how residents feel in that area about a park back there. I think there would need to be some due diligence to work with. I mean, there needs to be a vision and to work with folks if that is the right location. It is in Richmond. So that's another issue, how people in El Sobrante feel about that, but it is in the accessible to the whole valley. But I think there would need to be some more work done to look at where the access would be, where would parking be. For the park, you'd probably have to use a portion of it and build a parking lot because there's not sufficient parking on the street. So again, all of this, I think, would need more due diligence. And if we want to have a work group look at this site, we can do that. I think that would be fine. But I want to do away with this notion that we're ready and rushed on this to go collect signatures. I think there's a work that needs to be done. You just don't go out and collect signatures to put something on the ballot. You have to develop support. People are going to say, where's the park? What are you going to do with it? How much is it going to cost? all of those, that's why we're sort of now meeting. And we don't have to deal with other issues. Remember last year when we met, there were residents in El Sobrante who wanted a measure that dealt with the sheriff and parks. The good news is we don't have to deal with the sheriff issues, only a park. So I think that is a new piece of information that helps us focus on parks. Kim.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering how much we can draw on the already done efforts of, or in progress efforts around like the general plan update, as well as like the working session that Sharon and others have done that developed kind of this rendering that we have of the Maori project that a lot of community members really put a lot of input into. And it has all of these different elements of what people have expressed that they want to see. How much can we like draw on that and get us to at least a starting point to really start advocating around and getting support around?
Yeah, so, and maybe Edgar, you can do away with this site so we can see each other more. Good. So, good question. From a general plan perspective, that since we're in the middle of, as you know, redoing our general plan, if there's interest in moving forward with that site, we can look at changing the general plan. And as this we're not approving the general plan changes until next year. Now, will there be issues about the property owner claiming is it a taking, right, to change it to a park use when they have it on the market? So that's an issue we'll just have to take a look at legally. But the general plan issue is, I think is more doable because we're in the middle of currently working on the general plan and can change designations in this process, right? With regard to I think the design that was done, and right, there was a community process leading to it. What we would want to do is have Public Works then take a look at that plan, scrutinize it, and come up with its own estimate on what construction, because that's what, look, they do this for a living, right? They've got they can, so I think that is a starting point for sure. And they could do an estimate of the capital cost and the maintenance cost for a park like that. I think, but and the question is, does that need to be fine-tuned more? Should there be more community meetings to fine-tune it? I know in talking to the realtor, they haven't really had, everyone who's been interested in it has dropped out for varying reasons. So, what we do with the designation, I think there's some room in the general plan on that. But, again, I don't think that is a site that is particularly, attractive necessarily to folks coming in and developing. They haven't been successful, obviously, for several years on that site. It's available. How long, will they hold it more? Obviously, their financial interest is to make money. And if they could sell it for a park, they'll take that too. Is there negotiating room from their 988? Maybe. But I think, so a starting point could be to look at, I would think it would make sense for Public Works if we give them the sort of the task to start to look at the design that was in the grant application, and also get them to provide any input over what would involve the least amount of maintenance. Use their sort of expertise. They may say, well, it'll be less maintenance if you change this or change that. So I think all of that makes some sense. And I think this work group can actually sort of, the purpose of this work group is to stay involved on those issues and to provide input. But I can have Public Works look at that. Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, go ahead. Yes.
Thank you very much. So suppose we approve, put a ballot measure for like $50 per parcel for 10 years.
So Hala, I want to be really clear. I am not going to have a ballot measure go forward that doesn't have a plan and is only a portion of the money. That's not.
That's what that's exactly my question.
Yeah.
So if it's for 10 years, that covers the cost of acquisition and building Oh, you're saying it should be
I don't know how many
permanently for
times I
maintenance?
have to say this. The
Okay.
county will not take a park unless it has a revenue source to maintain the park. You will learn this if you get elected to the Richmond City Council.
Got it.
They're gonna
Okay, so
say,
let me paraphrase.
We
Let me
need money
rephrase
to
it.
maintain a park. I'm just
Okay.
saying, and we can't change that. If I can't change that if I wanted to.
So-
We need money to build it and money to maintain it. We're a professional government agency. It can't be done by volunteers, and we can't raise part of the money.
I
That's
understand.
why we're here.
I'm not, I understand and appreciate.
okay,
So,
yeah.
However, we're gonna, so is it going to be a larger amount for acquisition and building, a lower amount for maintenance? My suggestion is have a survey to the community, get a feeling of how supportive the community is, and then start the work. But we need the initial language for how much money we need. Larger sum, probably $50 per parcel for the first 10 years, and then $25 or $10 per parcel. Afterwards, I don't know what it is. We need your help, and then send a survey and then go from
So when we went to the Bay Area, 9 counties to vote on Measure AA, we didn't say, oh, let's do the measure, let's write a measure and figure out, ask for some amount. There was years of preparation of understanding where wetland restoration needed to happen. So here, I think, I'm trying to move us in a direction that gets us somewhere. And then I want to hear from others. We would need to understand first some more, the general parameters of, and I laid out here, park construction and maintenance issues. What is the construction going to cost? The Citizens for Greener El Sobrante estimate was around $7.5 million I think for that site. I'm just using round numbers. We would have Public Works look at that. They would and give us suggestions as well about, what design would take the least amount of maintenance. I do think that's an important point. And then they would give us the estimate of what maintenance would be. And then we would know what the measure should collect, right? And I'm just saying, I'm picking a number. I mean, if you look at other parks, and I don't know, is it going to be 50 to 100,000 a year to maintain this park? Maybe. Let's just say a range. And then is it going to cost 7 million to build it? That starts to give us a range of what we need. And then we would put a CPI inflator in the parcel tax, so it would go up over time. But we need that information, and we can start with the design and the grant application. We can start with that, but we need to get those firmed up. Drafting a petition is easy. Drafting the ballot language is easy. We don't want residents to go out and collect signatures and then have to change it, because then they have to go back out and collect the signatures all over again. So there's a very legalistic process. So that's why we need to do the work first. I'm not worried about drafting stuff. I'm worried more about getting the details together of a plan. And then remember that when we all go out to collect signatures, there's going to be people against this. And there has to be a message, a narrative about this. And the more detail we work out, and the less unanswered questions, the greater the chance that people support it and we can respond to the opponents. Melinda?
Thanks. I just wanted to say thank you to Sharon and everybody who's been working on this for a really long time. I know that you all have just worked really, really hard, and I appreciate that we're getting these meetings going. So I hope we meet more often to continue doing this part of the work, because I think it's too bad we hadn't met for a whole year. We need to meet more often and really talk about this. But over in the chat, Sue Boudreau and I are sort of having a conversation about, I think we need a little bit more. It's very easy to say we'd like a new park in El Sobrante, but everybody uses parks differently. And I know what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking what a park I might use that for, but other people have other ideas. And I'm not sure that I'm curious as to whether or not there's been a significant survey done of I mean, we have, according to the census data, which I put in the chat, we've now got 15,000 residents. And only 5% of those 15,000 are have small children. So do we need like park structures that have play structures? Do we need more picnic areas? I mean, there's really nice picnic areas in Kennedy Grove. What exactly are we looking for in our parks space? Or is it really about connecting the hiking trails? Because that'll make all the difference as to where this ought to be, if really what we project our new use is going to be. So anybody done that kind of survey work of our people? Because that can be done by volunteers. We can survey our community and find out, not asking them, are they, not even talking about a tax yet. What kind of park do they want?
Yeah, and the last time, and I can get it out, there was a park study done 22 years ago out at El Sobrante and with Richmond. It was part of this dream we had, which was for the city and the county to work together on a measure in the El Sobrante Valley. And we quickly found it's not easy to work on a measure with Richmond because they have their own parks department. And so it's going to have to be in an unincorporated area only. And it was a park study. I'll pull it out and send it, that analyzed where parks were in El Sobrante. But it's old. It's 20 years old. I'll get it.
I think 20 years old is too old. I think we need something now.
That's right. Exactly. But it probably shows where all the park inventory was that hasn't changed, right? But
well, you sent us that. You sent us the park inventory, but I'm not sure, you know, because everybody says park, yes, but I know it's just like barbecue. You know, when I say I'd like some barbecue, I'm from Texas. That means something really specific, and that may not be what you have in mind. So we need to find out what people mean by, yeah, I'd like a new park. What are they really looking for?
Yeah. Mark.
Yes. So I went by the property up there behind Deanza. The only access to it is through Deanza's student parking. Regency Court is the question unless you're going to tear down some $1 million houses. And then the other people are going to have a fit by people driving up their street. So I don't see that being relevant unless the school district is going to allow people to go in and out of that parking lot during the day while school's going on. So and that section of land that goes out to Santa Rita Road is nothing but a green belt for the school. That land should be just given back to them and tell them it's unuseful to us. You might as well take care of it, because all it is a green belt between the houses and the field. Absolutely useless for a park.
Yeah.
So that whole thing of, I don't know what you could put there or when it would be useful other than when there was no school going on.
Right.
Yeah. Only that would be useful. Other spot that I saw is, you know where Mechanics Bank is, and AT&T is behind. And then behind that, there's a whole vacant area there that is totally unbuildable for any housing. That land has, you know, there's all the houses that Richmond has built above that in off of Hillcrest there in El Sobrante. When they built all those houses, weren't they supposed to put in a park in their area there?
Yeah, well, when houses were built, there was park dedication, park fees paid by the developer. That's what goes into an account. I mean, that was before my time, but they were lesser at the time, Mark, but there would have been park fees paid at the time. So no, there was obviously no park built as a result of that. And I can tell you that there was a longstanding interest in having the Mechanics Bank parking lot be a town square. I mean, that just came out of the public a long time ago. But I know a lot of the interest in the Maori property is because it fronts on the creek and the location of it. The back portion of the property, right, is a nice setting. I mean, you know, there are issues that would have to be dealt with. You know, one of the things we've had to deal with on the library site was the unhoused population. As you know, the fire that was caused on that site was caused by unhoused people who were using the porta potty out there. And you know, and there were lots of issues about contamination of the creek, and that's why the fence was built. You know, so I think that's an issue that would have to be addressed at any site along the creek, especially that's hidden back, is ensuring that there's use. There's been a whole history. Our only experience with the park area is the one around the library by the creek. And it hasn't gotten a lot of use. My hope is it'll get more use as the Friends and the Historical Society hold events there, because it's a nice setting and it has an amphitheater, and you know, it's a different thing.
So the other issue with that Maori property is I could almost bet that it's going to be a lot of contamination there, because they went in and dumped a bunch of contaminated dirt in that lot behind it about 7 or 8 years ago. And that Maori gas station has underground oil storage tanks that have never been removed. So there's going to be a rather large cleanup amount of money on that property. When they do a soil report on there, they're going to find out that that property is probably worth negative what they want for it, because it's going to cost millions of dollars to clean it up. Almost. That's why that gas station closed, is because the tanks leaked. And he didn't want to put new tanks in. That's why he closed the gas station. So that property, when they go in to investigate the ground there, it's going to be a nightmare. I can almost guarantee you it's going to cost $5 to $10 million to clean it up. So, I mean, I understand wanting to go to the creek, but I think that property is probably the wrong spot. Now, if you PJ's restaurant is closed because the owner, John Javogri, died, and that property is up for sale as well. And that's a much cleaner property because it's never had a gas station on it. And it has a much larger creek frontage. So go in and do creek frontage property, that would probably be a better option, and they would have less money in cleanup. The other spot that I saw that looked really nice was behind the fire station over on the new station over on Valley View. Behind that is watershed property that East Bay Regional owns. And I think if there's no structures built on it and it's just grass and trees and a dog park or something, I don't see that being an impact on their watershed area. And I think probably East Bay Mud would like to get rid of it and not have to maintain the weeds on it all the time. So that's probably another area to look at, is right behind the fire station. Do you know where I'm talking about, John?
I do. You're talking behind the Richmond Fire Station, not the county fire station.
Right. The
But they're
Richmond.
On Amend Road. I know. I was on the East Bay Mud board, so I'm pretty familiar. That's East Bay Mud property back there. And that land to build the fire station was land that East Bay, in fact, the Boys and Girls Club had some property out there. I don't think they own it anymore. They got from East Bay Mud. So, I mean, you're raising the issue of whether, and this is, I'll just ask this question of whether other sites should be explored in addition to the Maori site. Should there be a more holistic look at sites? So that's a legitimate question to ask. I mean, it does get down to ultimately where in the community does the community want to see a park? And then what are the possible sites that are available in those areas? If it's downtown, we obviously know some of the sites downtown, including the Maori site. Are there other areas? This gets into why we all need to be unified. I mean, I've been a little frustrated that there's been a lot of rhetoric around stuff on this site. if we want to be unified for a park that's either at the Maori site or somewhere else, we need to be working together.
Yes.
And not be pushing stuff that's not realistic, because voters are smart. They get these issues, and we need to be unified, business community, residents, MAC, activists, environmental groups, if we're really going to work on this. And that was the purpose of having this working group.
And I think you know from the past that getting property orders in El Sobrante to cough up any money is tough.
Yeah. Yes.
So the demographics have changed, so it might get easier here in the future, but
Yeah.
you better have your plan to give to them, or they're not going to just give money without a ticket.
Yeah.
So
Right. Okay.
that's
John?
Yeah, Sharon wanted to respond, I think. Yeah.
Yes, please. Thank you. Mark, the Maoris did do a number of inspections and soil tests, and all the tanks have been removed. The soil that was dumped there, nobody knows if it's contaminated or not, and that does have to be tested. But the property has a clean bill of health from the state. I know the county will probably want to ask for more inspections. You know, the surveys were done for the Prop 68 grant that included demographics, and hundreds of people responded to what they wanted to see in the park, what they liked to see. And some items were more popular than others. And the design that we should show the design at some point that was created came out of the community, the hundreds that responded, and just about every amenity, except for large sports fields, because it's a small property. You know, the park's only an acre. It's really not a big piece of land, and it's not going to require hundreds of thousands to maintain. But all of the amenities that the community wanted, that they responded to, and that they said they were interested in, do appear. They're in the design. And so they satisfy, except for big park fields, everything that you could want to have in a park. I mean, the property is in a perfect location for accessibility. 30,000 cars travel that road every day. It has high exposure and can have ample parking, can have a spectacular parking if the B of A parking lot became available in part for the park as well. You know, I just think that we're so close to having a park in Sobrante. So much work has been done. This process has really evolved. And I think I would like to see the county take on what the application produced, the design that it produced, the budget that it produced, and come up with its own evaluation and get us closer to having a park. And that I'd like to know what the next steps for that would be. And I hope the community here today would support that.
Sharon, can you get to us maybe the full surveys and design for the park in a form that we could send out to everybody? I think that would be helpful. I know you've said the clean bill of health. Public Works hasn't reached that conclusion. I think, you know, if the tanks have been removed, that doesn't mean there's not still contamination in the soil. So there would need to be, some additional soil studies to look at what park uses require a certain level of, as you know, of remediation up to a certain use. Yeah, so I think we would ask the real estate division, this is what they do for a living, to actually, I don't rely on the representation of the realtor because they're trying to sell the property, right? They're going to do their due diligence and look at what is it, what's been done. They would review the tests that have been done. They would determine what else would need to be done. Those things cost money, right? So I think we would want to look at those things for that site. You raise a good issue about parking. There are standards about how much parking is needed for parks. So that's a question as well, because you have to have some parking because there's not really much on-street parking available. So that is an issue, right? It is a small area, but parking, they would have to look at the design and look at parks. As you know, they didn't review your design. So, and ultimately that was not a successful grant application. I think that's why we should all have an open mind about, even with all the good work that was done to put that together and the community input, is does that design need to be fine-tuned to make it more realistic if that is the site? So I'm just saying we shouldn't be consider the current design cast in stone. It can form the foundation. And then, but I think parking is going to need to be addressed on that and spending. I want to make sure others who haven't spoken have a chance to say something, just to give any input or thoughts or questions. Yeah, go ahead.
There's parking in the design.
Yeah,
There's-
how many, I forgot, how many spots?
I
was
don't
it?
remember exactly how many,
That,
but
so
that's
will you send that to us that we could get to everybody, the design? I think people have asked for it, the design, the survey, I think the information you collected is really good information to understand, to talk to a lot of folks. And we may need to go out and get more input as well, but I think it'd be good getting the information you provide.
sure.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so they removed the gas tanks out of there, but underneath that building is a waste oil tank. All the gas stations in that era had them. And it also has 2 in-ground lifts that have oil tanks in them. And all of those things leak into the soil. That's why they do not put them in anymore, because of that issue. So they can say that thing has a clean bill of health, but until they go out there and drill cores and test it, I would bet that it's going to come up dirty, because those old tanks used to leak into the ground. So when they tear down a gas station off and leave it for 25 years, and that's for the hydrocarbons to evaporate out of the soil, that's the only way that they'll ever get a chance to build on them. So a gas station, bad site. And I mean, I'm sure you know this, air quality, how much those things emit out of there. And so I think, yes, having a park on the creek's a great idea. And the problem is the other property owners who own that parcel of the creek would love to give it up to an eminent domain and take it out of their responsibility for keeping it clean. But I think it's going to be a large maintenance issue to clean it up from the unhoused going like Oliver's right now. I called you a couple of months back when somebody was barbecuing down in the creek and there was a huge fire coming out of there. And the fire said they had a right to cook their meals in there. So,
Right. All right. I want to make sure we hear from others. No, thanks, Mark. Tom? Tom, we can't hear you. You're muted.
So I had just a general question. It's agnostic regarding whether it's a Maori site or any other site. I'm just thinking about, let's say our vision is accomplished by acquiring some property in El Sobrante that at this point is privately owned. So we go ahead and we decide that we want to create this park. And so the question I have is that property, unless the owner decides that, they'll just hold it to sell to us, that property could be for sale at the same time we're sort of putting this initiative together. So how do we work that issue out?
That's a good question. That's the issue with any site, and with the Maori site specifically is listed for sale. The current escrow is falling through. Unless you pay for an option to hold the site for a period of time and then do your due diligence, if that's the site that one is really interested in, that is one way to hold it. I don't know what option money takes. All we have is $50,000. I'm not sure what that gets. And let me just say, we don't want to make the mistake that the R9 committee made 25 years ago. which was to get the county to buy a piece of land using park dedication money and sitting on it for 25 years because it wasn't the right site.
Right.
We don't want to repeat that, right? We want to figure out a site that we could make happen and work and do a measure. The value of buying, so the question is, do we, is there a way to come up with money to put an option on it? What would that cost? That would hold the site. Or, I don't know if that site's going to sell anytime soon. It hasn't, every time someone's put an option on it, it's, the whole plans have fallen through. I don't want to see a tire shop there. I don't think we have to frankly worry about having a tire kind of shop there either. So, the other thing is, I think there has to be some general sort of consensus about should this be the preferential site? And should we explore this site and be looking at other sites as a backup as well? I think that's part of, we don't have to make decisions today. This was meant to be a first meeting. Yes, we will meet frequently. And there's work to be done between the meetings. And I think there's already some follow-up that will come out of this meeting. But yeah, I think that's a risk on any site, including this one, unless you have an option to hold it. And Kim, let me ask you, I know as the Director of Citizens for Greener El Sobrante, I know you're in communication with folks, and Sharon, you as well. Does it make sense to do some kind of update to folks? I think all of the hard work to collect signatures is important and would be helpful in collecting signatures for a voting petition. And I think, how do we give an update to people on what's going on? I'm a little concerned that some of the communication out there has just created conflict. And when we create conflict, people aren't going to support a measure. How do we sort of provide communication about what's going on, what we're doing, and keep people engaged about this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we definitely plan to put out an update, as well as at the same time we're making a call for volunteers. A call for volunteers at the stroll, and the focus of the stroll is really trying to build support for a potential ballot initiative. So this meeting is very helpful for me to clarify kind of when we get questions about what the current plan is, because I think we just want to get as many people as possible to sign on saying, like, we're going to help, we're interested in exploring a ballot initiative, or we're going to help, further build support. So I'm happy to put out an update based on like what we've done today. And actually I had one more question. In terms of like this issue of timing around a site that's for sale. If a buyer was interested in purchasing the whole plot and just having their business in front, is there an opportunity to like purchase a piece of it for, access to the back?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I know Sharon and I have talked about that on the previous two potential buyers. I didn't like what they were proposing, right, on their development. But in both those cases, I think there was interest, and maybe this depends on obviously what the valuable part of the site is, the frontage on the dam road, right? Because that's whatever kind of business is there or housing, right? It's the part on the front. There was interest by both of them, I think, to either transfer or sell at below market the back portion. I think that is something it would mean that is always a possibility. And if they're strongly encouraged to do that, if they will come in to the county and look at what's their chance of success during their due diligence period And in both these cases, they've dropped their options and they, right, didn't buy the property. A perfect example, and Gavin and Melinda know this, is, you know, a company wanted to build a gas station on the Adachi Nursery site with a convenience store. And I told them, we don't allow liquor sales and we don't allow tobacco sales. Well, when they heard that, they saw, wow, we're not going to bring in the revenue to make this work. And so this is when we put a meeting together in my office with Ross Hilsheim, who's actually now in the County Planning Commission. He was the entity that bought the old site. And then with a meeting with Planning Justice, with Gavin and Melinda, they came to an agreement and they bought the property. He had already bought it. And they're turning it into, right, a really nice cafe and nursery and development. So he saw that he couldn't really get what he wanted, but he had already bought it. I think what's happening on this site is they're coming in and, you know, and they're getting a reality check and then they're dropping out for whatever reason. But yeah, I mean, we obviously have ability to permit what goes there. So we would have a lot of leverage in an appropriate way, you know, and I think it is possible that they could, you know, there's two parcels there, but they could transfer a part of it, the part that's most desirable near the creek, and get access to it, depending what the development is. But I don't think, I could be wrong, but I don't see it selling anytime soon. And we would want to be in contact with anybody who put an option on the property. Yeah.
And what I want to be clear about when I'm communicating to our members as follow-up is that the county is both pursuing Plan A and Plan B through D at the same time, right? Like, I think Sharon was saying, you know, we want to see the county pick up what the proposal was, which Sharon, you should definitely like just share all of those proposal materials with Joya's office. And so we want to get like validation from Public Works, get an update and evaluation on that, in addition to like the process of surveying residents, getting ideas about park uses, and then exploring other sites. That's all going to be happening kind of in parallel.
Yeah, I think we can have Public Works do a deeper dive into what was proposed, you know, get back any other information that would need to be looked at on contamination and soil issues. And frankly, the way Public Works works, if they get into spending a lot of time on something, they need to bill something for it, and we can use the $50,000, which is not enough money to buy property anyway. We can use the $50,000 park dedication money to support any pre-planning efforts in Public Works. It's interesting, we're doing this in Kensington, where there's an interest in taking over the paths in Kensington. That's a very expensive process, and we're using $100,000 in park fees that we have in Kensington to hire a consultant and do a lot of pre-planning about acquiring the paths. We have a whole working group going on there and actually making a lot of progress. Likewise, we could use some of the park funding we have here to fund Public Works if they need it to do some work. So I think that is an option for us. And we could have some work. So Sharon, if you send that over, we can do that. You know, and get more details. Did I answer anything else, Kim? On that? Okay. Yeah, and I think Sue, go ahead. Oh, you got it, you're muted. There we go. No.
I said Nicole was first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Nicole?
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I didn't see your hand. I apologize.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't keep it up very long. A couple things. The more that I listen, the more that I'm interested in finding out about the area behind Mechanics Bank, behind Larry's Tires, around that area, to see what that would cost. Thinking about the Maui property, while I love the idea in theory, I think that you need the bike path, the walking and bike path to make it cohesive and accessible as part of that. And in addition to that, parking, let me just share Bank of America, the owner of the Bank of America properties, attitude about allowing parking. The Chamber of Commerce approached him about having, letting people park there like vendors during the stroll, and they wanted to charge us $500 for the day. So I don't think that they're going to be super friendly about allowing that lot to be used as a parking lot unless we pay them like, you know, $1 million and buy the land or something like that. And it would probably be more than $1 million, because if it's $1 million for an empty piece of land that has, you know, toxic cleanup issues, they have a building on their land, and, you know, it doesn't have environmental issues. So I think it would probably be considerably more than that. So that's my big concern about that property. Speaking as, you know, for the chamber, I think what we would like to see is an area where we can have perhaps farmers markets, movie screenings, concerts outdoors, you know, things like that, things that make the community want to gather and have a sense of community. So I you know, I mean, I'm going to be likely supportive of anything that can be done and is feasible, and will gladly pay my $200 a year because I have 2 parcels in El Sobrante, although I can't vote in El Sobrante anymore.
But you could pay money.
But I'm glad, whatever the voters decide, and I'll encourage them to vote for a parcel tax. You know, our area does tend to be, well, just as a mortgage person, I can tell you that I have to send people to Pittsburgh, Antioch, and Vallejo in the same price range, although those prices are lower, because property taxes, an extra $100 a month in property taxes, or $200
A year,
a month
100 a year, right?
well, I'm just,
Yeah.
per
right.
month. I mean, when you have a 800,000 sales
Right.
price, it's 100 or 200 more a month here than it would be.
Right.
in
Oh, I
Vallejo
see.
for the
Yeah,
same
right.
Sales price, and they're, you know, and with interest rates rising and stuff like that, people are not qualifying. And a lot of the times, I mean, I tell them, hey, you qualify for X amount in a low property tax area, and if you buy in any other than a low property tax area, give me the property address and I'll calculate what the taxes will be and let you know what the price would be.
Okay, I'm joining the people that have to drop off
Yeah.
also.
So what we're gonna do, we're gonna send notes out. We're gonna do some follow-up and reach and set up another meeting here shortly, and we're gonna do some follow-up about things. I know we wanted to end by 7, so we're going past 7. So we will do some follow-up. I want to respect people's time. Is there any last minute follow-up that people want to see other than what we've talked about so far?
Sue had something.
Sue?
I just want to quickly say, I think we should also look at leveraging existing parks and facilities, including school district stuff. We actually have lots of playing fields in schools. We have a lot of play structures and stuff like that in schools in reasonably central positions. And I think that the issue of building community, I'm not sure if that's a separate thing to parks, but I think that I really, really strongly agree with you, Nicole. We don't have somewhere that is a central place for El Sobrante. And that's something I'm also extremely keen on figuring out. I put other comments in the chat, and I'm really looking forward to meeting again shortly.
And Nicole, in the meantime, if you're looking for a place for the farmer's market, you know, that amphitheater area, some of the area around the library is available for that too. Okay, that is too, the parking lot and the park area, depending on the size of it, we're willing to work with you in the meantime to use that site.
I met someone not too long ago that had a microspout business and was in the Martinez market, and I met him in the Crockett.
Yeah.
I'll have to see if I can find their card, but
Yeah.
I'd like to get actual farmers involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
and, you know, the merchants involved in the planning rather than,
I know that Mechanics Bank has not particularly been very cooperative, just like B of A on their parking lot. I mean, they were bought out. They're no longer locally owned, as you know, and they were bought out by a larger financial institution. And so they're not particularly, because, you know, very, have been very cooperative
in
either.
fact, I tried to get them to allow us to put a little pickleball cart in their parking lot during the stroll. And I was told, no, if you happen to know any parking lots that aren't going to be used during the stroll that would allow a pickleball court, I'll let Darlene know, Darlene Draft. Who's,
Okay, yeah, she's working on that, right?
yeah, well, and I'm trying.
Right,
to
you are,
but
yes.
I haven't found anything, so if you, and I asked her to drive down there and we can, you know, maybe if she sees something that we can ask the owner, but.
Right. So Sharon, you'll send over the design and all of that information that we could have Public Works do a little more work on. I do think we're talking a parallel track of looking at that, but also understanding the whole issue of location and, you know, again, what are there alternatives to the Maori site? Do they make more sense or not? I'm not answering that question other than, you know, we're trying to get everybody on board with understanding what, you know, what's the support level for parks. That we're doing this in a way to try to build public support, right? That's really everybody wants a park, but they don't always want a park near them, interestingly enough, and they don't want to pay for it. So, I mean, it's getting from the theory of supporting a park to paying for it, and the look is always the challenge. Anything else? Okay, I think we had.
Can we record the chat? Will the chat disappear, or is there some record?
We've recorded this, so Edgar, do we keep the chat?
I believe so.
I think it does save. Mark, did you have your hand up for one last comment?
No, I'm just trying to take it off, but I didn't
Okay.
get it.
All right.
Thank
No,
you.
I think you hit it on the head. People don't want it next to them and they don't want to pay for it, but they want it.
Yeah. I mean,
And-
yeah.
And the other thing is, I think Mechanics Bank, it would be a great spot for a community center and a town. And to tell you the truth, I don't know how long they're going to be there because big banks are a thing of the past.
Right. Well, the other idea is whether they sell it for, they may sell it off for residential development, right? That's the one area where they'll make money is housing on the damn road.
Yeah.
Because of the mixed use scenario.
That's right.
Right. I think, right. That may happen, right? Just like B of A closed. I think you're right. It's a matter of time before Mechanics Bank closes.
But if it had housing and retail all the way around the outside, it would leave a spot for a town square.
Yeah.
Well, the
So
same,
Yes, Sharon? Yeah.
To be put into the thought of it happening.
Bank of America could be a community center, right?
Yeah, let me just say, community centers, having been a co-founder of the Rise Youth Center, somebody has to operate. You can't just have a building. You have to have someone running the building. You have to have funding for it. Rise went from a small space to a large space over years. And it's a youth center. Boys and Girls Club didn't have the money to keep in El Sobrante. We were working with them. A building doesn't create a community center. It has to be. I mean, I think, frankly, you know, I think taking a park, working on this park issue is going to be, I think, challenging enough. Trying to expand and have a park in a community center is just well beyond. I don't think we've seen who would run it, how much it will cost, and will just complicate the park issue at this time.
It's just part of the big picture. It's not all at once.
Yeah. I mean, we were going to make, by the way, we were looking at making park money. Some people may remember this, park money possibly available to the Boys and Girls Club, creating a community center for the public at its site on the Appian Way. And that project would have cost millions of dollars. And as you saw, they couldn't even afford to stay at their site and operate on Appian Way. So I think, you know, and frankly, you know, this is where this mixed use idea comes in. There is the Elks Lodge there, which in a way is like a community center. They will make it available for community events. There's the Old Boys and Girls Club on Appian Way. I'm not sure we need to spend millions of dollars to buy a building that we don't know who's going to run it. When we have others, we have the Masonic Lodge, we have the Elks Club, and we have the site on Appian Way, all of which are community spaces, and they're not always utilized.
Right.
But community center often houses nonprofits, other businesses, nonprofits usually. It's part of the community center. It's not just an empty
Yeah,
building.
You'd have to find a nonprofit needs money to operate and to run programs. And we don't have nonprofits knocking down the door, big ones looking for a site. It's sort of a chicken and egg thing. You don't have them looking for a site right now.
Because they don't make any money.
Boys and Girls Club's the perfect example. They couldn't afford to keep their site. There's like, you know, I think that's, and the, you know, we fixed up the site for the Historical Society, and they didn't have the money to do it. So they have a small site, and so do the Friends now in that building, and those are community spaces as well. And that's a big building, that B of A building. It's really big.
And it's pretty much unchangeable because it's all concrete. Really hard to get anything out of that.
It's a fortress. It could be, could be a retail, like a marketplace, like the marketplace in Oakland. Could have retail and housing above it because it's already got this infrastructure to support that. But anyway,
All right, so well, I think we've talked about a lot of issues. We'll send out some follow-up on this, and we'll look, should we meet in about a month?
oh,
We can
Sure,
follow
sounds
up work and look at meeting in about a month,
good. Get some more info out there.
right?
Do you
Yeah.
think it would be possible to meet in person? I think that to try and build a sense of going forward together, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, we could meet at what we could do is use the El Sobrante community room at the library and set it up for hybrid.
Right.
So any members of this group who can't make it can Zoom in, and we have the technology there to do that. So we can do that. We could meet in person. Whoever wants to come, comes, and whoever can't can still Zoom in
Up to what hour will they let us be there?
whenever we need it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, we may just be certain nights though, but yeah, Nicole, the MAC, that's where the MAC used to meet, right? Now we have the new facility. So yeah, we could definitely do after work kind of stuff. We have the ability to go in and use it.
Sounds very convenient for me. I think I like the location.
Good, we will do it. All right. Thanks, everybody. We will, I think, and I'll look forward to getting that, Sharon, and we'll talk more. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.